All right, hi everyone. I'm making a video that was spurred by a video I saw about it was a Yale graduate who was talking about reading becoming obsolete. She went so far as to say that reading might be viewed as like an anomalous activity that occupied humanity for a short period of time and then disappeared. I think that's a little bit bold, to be frank. I don't think reading is going away entirely, but it's not going to be something that's very normal. It's not going to be something that you can expect from ordinary people, and I think there's a ton of consequences associated with this. I've been watching this very, very closely throughout my life, and I don't think people really understand what this could entail or what this could mean. And I'm just going to share with you some of my ideas as to what it means, and we'll see to what extent the trajectory was correct or not. But we might be returning to a world where reading itself, the act of reading, will be analogous to what reading in Latin was or meant, say around the 17th century and prior to that, where it's only going to be something that is the activity of a small group of people, and I think it will be associated with the elites. That need not be the case entirely, but it's just only a few people who demonstrate the initiative and the will to read, and who live lifestyles where reading is rather essential, where complex organization is essential, complex thought. These will be the people who read, and we'll see what happens in that arrangement. But I think the ultimate point I want to make is I think a lot of the ideas that we have that prop up our societies at present, that prop up the Western democracies, are predicated upon regular renewal through the act of reading. You have to have some understanding of individual rights. You have to have some understanding of like a reason for human beings to pursue truth, to vote for things that are true. There has to be some mythology undergirding these political structures and these social structures, and I think we've reached a point where I think, at least we're heading in this direction, from what I understand of the younger generations, and sort of just projecting outward. Where are we going to be 50 years from now? This stuff is not going to last. When people aren't regularly receiving a tradition of ideas, they start gravitating towards other things. In nature, primal nature has a stronger voice. And this is a problem for, we'll say, conservatives in the country don't like this. People who want individuals to read, Marxism, Marxist-Leninism, that sort of thing. It's a problem for them. It's a problem for religious people, for people who would like other individuals to lead their lives in accordance with the rules of God. Now that's a tricky issue because there are different approaches insofar as instilling morality for the religious person, or the religious leader. But I think that this turn towards an oratory-based culture and a propagandized culture will be destroying basically the epistemic infrastructure of liberal democracy. And we're seeing this play out in real time, and it's not happening extremely quickly, but it's not happening extremely slowly either. This is an era where people are going to be less wanting to think deeply. They will want whether they be machines or people, they want other things to think for them. And they're not going to be very, very scrupulous insofar as judging the behaviors and activities of leaders as they would have been previously. At least they won't be so scrutinizing in such a manner as to preserve the basic structure of society. Now, if people want to be critical, they want to be primal in their anger, and they don't like complication. They don't like being challenged too deeply. They react to this violently, and I think we're veering towards a more primitive society. And I think within that, there is opportunity. There are opportunities for new ways of life, for a new civilization to emerge in North America, at least. Where the roots of civilization are a little bit more recent, quite more recent. This is a hard thing for older people to digest. The main trains of thought that still dominate the federal government, the weird kind of MAGA stuff that we're in at present aside, most of the tone of government is still heavily influenced by neoconservative, neoliberal talking points. Again, these words, democracy, rights, freedom, have become sort of like fetishes that people don't really understand, have some intuitive sense of, but do not understand very deeply. And what they're looking for mostly is acknowledgement of a series of ideas that comfort them, not so much as they're looking for an elaborate justification insofar as how a certain policy or a certain political framing preserves liberty, freedom, equality, that sort of thing. It's become shallow and superficial because this is not a literary society. And if you fall on the bad end of that primitive scrutiny, you are putting your life in danger. And I think we've seen examples of this. I think we see it in the taste for political violence, where if a person is providing a perspective that they want to assert as rigorous and true, if it's upsetting, that's enough reason to kill a person, and that's enough reason for many people, far too many people, to appreciate the violence and the murder. And there's, I think there's a lot of young people who look at the world we're in and think, oh my goodness, this is like people are making errors. This is degeneration. This is the antidote is to relentlessly push against it or something of that nature. What something of that kind of response. And what I've come to, at least for myself, is to not pursue that, but to recognize that the bourgeois morals of the last several decades in the West are contingent. They are not absolute. They can fade away. They probably will fade away. And we have to remember, okay, life goes on. Nature persists. Human nature persists. And the form that human nature takes, the passions that are channeled, go in various directions. Society's trajectory is not certain, and it isn't always the case that precedent is obeyed or respected. So we can lament the death of representative democracy. We can lament the end of bourgeois morals. We can lament the end of Christian morals. You can try and push against it. You can try. I don't think that those attempts will be very successful, and the world we're heading towards is going to blow a lot of people away. When you have man as an animal once more, there are going to be people tasked with addressing that. And we'll see how it goes. And it's I think the essential thing is again staying on the good side of this ignorance, and not putting your life at danger. And I personally, I don't think it's the wisest thing to try and push back against this or act as though we can restore a literate society where people, where everybody can be brought up to a certain literary level. I think this is an old idea, and we get this from the inheritance of our culture. We had Protestants and Puritans who took the Bible quite seriously, read it for themselves, tried to come to their own personal understanding of the big ideas, and put those things into practice politically through representative democracy. I think that stuff is going away, frankly. Maybe the Catholic Church will do better in this world because it has been historically a more authoritarian and hierarchical institution. But the secular strain of culture in the United States will be a vehicle for going down a more animalistic path, because what has sustained the ideas of secularism, secular humanism, have been predicated upon this more literate culture, where if people wanted to find out truth for themselves, they wanted to stand apart from the religious organizations, and in doing this, they wanted to take on the aspects of Christian morality that spoke towards the dignity of humankind, and they wanted to take that premise and bring it into fully autonomous directions. But if we don't have a literate culture, if we don't have the regular reminder of what it is that a more equitable society believes in, a more just society along these humanistic terms believes in, that this isn't something that is of interest to people, and if testing these ideas to ensure that they are sound and not leading towards disasters or breakdown, social breakdown, if there's no appetite for that sort of scrutiny, that sort of seriousness, then as I've said, nature will take its course. And the ideas that nature can permit, or ideas that a lot of people in the West are not have lived kind of in insulation from, and have some historical basis even for separating themselves from these things. This is partly present, or in fact, it's quite present in the discourse surrounding pre and post colonial civilizations. And I don't speak in this manner even to speak poorly of pre-colonial civilizations. I mean to suggest that before colonization, in a lot of indigenous communities, there were ways of life that were. I mean, you can study these things and look at how society functioned, and I'm not saying we're going to return to that or something, which would be alarmist to many people, but I am suggesting that the human mind can go in all kinds of various directions, and part of the reason why Western civilization had gone on a course that was so different from what was present in these pre-colonial cultures was the act of literacy at the scale that Western civilization had experienced it, and the culture that was sustained, that was more so opposed to nature itself, was less congruous with nature, and was more so an attempt to master nature, and that was the result of the pride, the contempt for the so-called savage person. We're losing that effectively. It's happening everywhere. So this is becoming a more primitive society. Again, the task now for people is staying away from the potential violent attitudes that will be brewing more commonly, and we're going to go through this period where socialism, conservatism, even populism and nationalism will run their course as the long-standing 20th century liberal norms, the post-war norms erode. Some of the stuff that people have been carrying on to that didn't have the opportunity to voice itself as emphatically as it could have during that period of relative world peace and strong confidence in liberal institutions. Those things will be voiced, and then those things will have to account for the literacy and reading crisis, and the morally anarchic and intellectually anarchic forces that are coming next. It might be the case that we continue to live in a sort of brainless consumer society where some vague notion of vibes and being cool and loving rights and hating the powerful and hating the rich and wanting to kill them and all that stuff. I guess that could go on forever. If that does go on forever, that means that the economic masters of the world were pretty good at securing their position, as that even that consumer lifestyle that so many people have grown used to is sustained by their order and their organization. And I'm not persuaded that that's going to endure either. So the world we're headed towards is going to be pretty novel, and reading will have its place, but only among those who really have a use for it. And I think it is going to be more of a secretive endeavor, more of an exclusive endeavor. I'm looking ahead. Again, my timeline here is like I can imagine this being the case in 50 years, but there's going to be some social. If I'm correct, there would be very very dramatic social shifts and probably a breakdown of the political orders that we're used to. If not, it's that these political orders are sustained nominally and not actually, and this is if it works as a popular narrative, these sort of this liberal idea of government and humanity would exist in speech, in a propagandized and false manner, and not in a real manner. And the people who are tasked with making complex decisions will be thinking about the world that they compose quite differently. That seems to be what's occurring at present, and I don't think it's a sustainable arrangement. At some point, the veil is going to break. The people who are more in touch with reality and the state that mankind is in at present will have their day. Especially if the people who are used to a previous order where they have a certain notion of human dignity, when those people die and their efforts are surpassed, this is going to be a pretty unrecognizable civilization. That's my guess. And again, I don't want to play into this idea of like regression and this is like, these are dumb primitive impulses that are destroying things. Like this is a incorrect thing or a wrong thing. It's just what is. That's all. This is what I think is hard for a lot of people on the the reactionary right, which I don't consider myself a part of because of the ideas I've expressed. But I think this is hard for them to grasp that nature has its due. The civilization we've built that's been predicated off of literacy is like a statue made of stone, and the weeds are overcoming it, and it's going to be new. And this was predicted by you can say it goes back to Rousseau, it goes back to Nietzsche certainly, and Nietzsche wouldn't have viewed this as an evil thing. He would have viewed this as just something to live with and acknowledge and to move forward with. So yeah, I mean, I think the next few years we're going to see democracy and the language of liberal democracy run its course. The neo-Marxists will have their say; they'll get their due. The fascists will also have their due, I guess. I don't think any of these people who are looking at, if they're trying to go back to a society that we once had but can't have, or almost seemingly had, that's not going to happen. We're not going to go backwards. And I'm not going to speak for the Marxists because it's not really my world, but I feel like they're going to be just playing their part in a story that they ultimately don't have influence over the conclusion, in this story. So, yeah, that's my spiel at present. I think you should read. You really should, but it's rough out there, and if you're too weird or too strange, you're not trusted. So you have to be on people's good side, and we'll see what happens. Okay, and I'll say this: if a lack of literacy, a lack of epistemic equality is going to promote extreme inequality, and I don't think it'll be like this commercial inequality we have at present. It's going to be weird. It's going to be very weird. We're going to have like people building, a new Versailles in the U.S. or something. It's going to get so crazy. That's my guess. All right, peace out.